price of that used car long before you even go to the dealership? Well, here's the answer. Simply go online and search Yahoo for Honda certified used cars. You'll see the current selection at the Honda dealers nearest you, along with the information you need to make an informed decision. Feels good to be in control, doesn't it? Okay, no more questions. Honda certified used cars. It may be used, but it's still a Honda.
Live from Progressive.
Next caller.
Hey, Flo, so what's up with the Snapshot discount?
It rewards your good driving habits, and it's our biggest discount ever.
Bigger than a safe driver discount?
Bigger.
Homeowners discount?
Bigger.
The phenomenally humongo discount?
If it existed, yeah.
Wow, that is big.
The Snapshot discount. It's new, it's a big deal, and it's finally here. Learn more at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and its affiliates, Mayfield Village, Ohio. Prices vary based on how you buy. Snapshot is not available in all states.
The Jake Feinberg Show, and that's the Blue Bulk. And my guest today is pianist Larry Vuckovich. He's a man who immigrated from the United States, or to the United States from Yugoslavia in the middle part of last century. And he came here with the intention to celebrate and collaborate with other like-minded musicians and play. But he also came with the understanding that he needed to assimilate to the American way of life as well. And ultimately, this balanced approach helped endear him to a large and soulful jazz community. He's accompanied singer-songwriter Jon Hendricks for many years in the 60s. Then he went back to Germany, was the house leader of the house band trio for quite some time. Pony Poindexter came in there, Lucky Thompson, Clifford Jordan. He just continues to, and today he just continues to make music with Street Scene and what we just heard off that album Blue Balkan. I'd like to welcome Larry Vuckovich to the show. Larry, welcome.
Thank you, Jake. Thank you for having me, man.
It's just to hear your the nice Eastern European voice on the radio is nice to hear, my friend.
It can be heavier. I can talk like Count Dracula.
No, that's great. It's great. I mean, it's refreshing. And I just wanted to read a comment here from the Blue Balkan, Then and Now. I'm sorry, yeah, both albums. The more recent one is Then and Now. It's dedicated to the spirit and memory of John Coltrane and all the ethnic minorities who have created some of the greatest, most soulful, and spiritually uplifting music in the world. Were those your words, Larry?
Yep. That's the message. That's the message, because the most soulful music always comes from the oppressed people, the minorities, because music is an expression of what people go through, and even great classical composers always somehow found inspiration in the ethnic folk themes.
The gypsy folk and
folk and different. Depends where they're from. Like African American musicians have strong inspiration from the gospel music, the soulful feeling, and then those minor notes, which form the blues scale, and then the African elements, the chants and the rhythms, like. The musicians in Russia, the composers there, there was a group called the Five. One of them was Borodin, Mussorgsky, Rimsky-Korsakov. They didn't want to deal so much to be so heavily influenced by Beethoven and Bach, even though they appreciate their music. They wanted the ethnic music of the eastern part of Russia, which had the gypsy elements, the Arabic. And same thing as klezmer, is that Eastern music. They wanted to be inspired, and they wanted to write off those influences.
And
so like Dvorak, who was a Bohemian, I guess, from Czechoslovakia, his music, Slavonic dances, like in the street scene, I did that Blue Bohemia. I used some of his elements. So depending where people live, they will use their personal connections,
Larry, you you grew up in a nuclear family? Like your mother and your father lived together for a long time, or how did your family like?
Oh yeah, they always lived together. My father lived in the States from 1910 till 21.
What was he doing there?
He wanted to explore the new world. You know, he enjoyed being there. You know, he worked in the fishing boats. He worked as a waiter in San Francisco in the really nice places like where Charlie Chaplin used to come, and where they had music. You know, he liked the American life. And then when the First World War came, he volunteered for the U.S. Army to fight the Axis. You know, and same shit in the Second World War. They started it up again. Anyway, so in 21, his other three brothers were forming a business in my hometown of Kotor. They made a very successful business of soap factory, cosmetics, olive oil. So they asked him to come back. So he went back, and he came back. I was born in 36, before the war.
Before the war, and then what role was Yugoslavia in during the war? Were they boxed in by the Axis powers, or were they neutral?
No. One of the politicians wanted to be neutral, to let Hitler go through, so they're not affected in any way. But the real hero of the war was General Mihailovich. The reason Hitler was late to Moscow because Mikhailovich's Chetniks held him up for 6 weeks. The Fuhrer was furious. He sent extra divisions because of this resistance.
Wow.
And
that's a great story.
Pardon me?
That's a great story.
It is, and his picture was on time. I have to tell you a brief story about the war, and I'll tell you who Tito was. Tito was a bum, and I'll tell you what I mean. So a flyer from U-State, Richard Feldman, you can look him up on Google, was saved. Mihailovich saved 500 U.S. shot-down flyers. One of them was hidden in our attic for 2 weeks with the Nazis sleeping downstairs. They would take rooms in different people's houses. Nothing you can do. They just occupy it. This guy was hidden in the attic, man. So to recapitulate briefly the story, Mikhailovich's group was resisting the Nazis, and then Tito came late into the picture, came in later. However, Tito signed an agreement with the Germans in 1943 in Croatia. So to describe Yugoslavia briefly, you had Croatia state, you had Serbia, you had Bosnia, you had Macedonia, Montenegro. Croatians and Bosnian Muslims always were with the Axis. In the First World War and the Second, they were the errand boys of the Axis.
Mm-hmm.
Serbs always were known for resisting. They wanted freedom. They were under Turks for 500 years. And they didn't, they did everything they could to get rid of them. They finally did. And they were the ones who stopped the Ottoman Turks going to the further Europe, to Vienna. So they were rewarded the northern parts of Yugoslavia, which was later in the Croatian state, when Croatia became a state. And they were rewarded that for their stoppage of the Ottoman Turks. So if you remember 1995, Operation Storm,
mm-hmm.
that was the thing where Clinton and the Western powers wanted to get rid of the Serbs in that area because to reward Croatian support in fighting the Serbs. See, they wanted to weaken the Serbia, because Serbia always said that resistance. That's why they bombed them. All these lies about humanitarian war, that's a bunch of BS, man.
Larry, this is passion that we desire on the Jake Feinberg Show, and it's the reason we have you on today.
Go
ahead.
Yeah, sure.
I just think that it speaks to a period of time that you were growing up, during that time when your family made a decision, a cognitive decision that they wanted to take their family to the United States.
Exactly.
Was it an economic? Was it a values driven decision? Was it an economic decision? What was the decision there?
I'll tell you, I'll just complete the story about Tito. Tito signed the agreement with Germans to help them to fight Mihailovich, and if the Allies came, he would fight with the Germans. He just wanted to be on the winning side. So to make it short, they dropped Mihailovich because they had a lot of false reports. Also, they didn't like the individuals of Serbs. So in other words, when Tito came to power, my father being anti-communist and Tito, anti-Tito, plus being an American citizen, was not popular. They put him in jail. He barely escaped being shot because he was an American citizen, and they had money, but they helped so many poor people, so people stood up for him. So when there was nothing left for us, he went and renewed his passport, and there was no future for us there. In 1951, we were lucky. He went back to San Francisco, and that's where my first-hand involvement in jazz started to develop.
So I just want to set the stage. So Larry, at 15 years old, came to the United States, came to the Bay Area, had already been playing the piano in a classical idiom for quite some time, and came to San Francisco, and boom, you got jacked into the pipeline of jazz. Why don't you take us through that, the early part there?
Okay, I was 14 when I came in 1951. By 1953 or so, or right after that, we started to go out. I mean, I started to go out with high school friends, to the ballrooms and theaters. I remember hearing Duke Ellington in a theater when it was like the end of it, when you would see a movie and a big band would be there. And Louis Bellson, I remember, had 2 bass drums, I said, wow. And then Lionel Hampton was there. Then we would hear these bands in the ballrooms, like Woody Herman, Kenton, Basie, Ellington, so that was, what a strong impact. And I started going to the clubs like Black Hawk and the Jazz Workshop were the 2 prominent clubs, and I heard the original Miles Davis a band with Coltrane and Red Garland and Philly Joe Jones. So as you can imagine, and then how exciting it was. And then when I met Cal Jader and his wife, Pat Jader, she became my first jazz piano teacher. And then after she got busy with the family, Vince Guaraldi, who played with Cal, became my jazz piano teacher, and I would listen at his house to Art Tatum, Bud Powell, all the great records. And
hold on, I just need to stop you right there. I cannot believe what I just heard. You befriended Cal Jader, who by all accounts affected so many people on so many different levels, and then Vince Guaraldi became your piano teacher. Is that right?
Jazz teacher, correct. And I was his only student.
Holy
because
cow.
Vince was busy, and he liked something about my playing. I was learning, but he liked the feeling. And once he told me, when we would listen to Hampton Hawes, he said, well, you and I, him and me, he said, we both have that same feeling, So, and then Vince started to send me to sub after he felt confident that I could do it. Like the first subbing gig I did for him was accompanying 2 major singers, Irene Krall, and then after her, I don't know if you remember Boyd Rayburn, the big band, innovative experimental band.
Larry, I got to ask you. Sure. Can you tell me about Irene Krall? She's I think my favorite jazz singer of all time, and nobody really knows who she is. Can you talk about what kind of woman she was?
She was so natural and so nice. I was not experienced, but she said, boy, you learn fast. She respected what I was trying to do, and I think I did a fairly good job considering the new format of accompanying vocalists, So she was very supportive, and her voice, as you know, had feeling, but it had such clarity, It was so... how can you say, elegantly attractive,
It was such a sexy voice, and then so then you take these lessons with Guaraldi, and did you say Cal Jader's wife was your first piano teacher?
Pat Jader, and Pat Jader introduced me to the music of Bill Evans. Also, Pat Jader liked Alice Larkins, and she had some of his voicings, where he used all 5 fingers in the chords, and it was really very exciting. And then going to Vince was a great introduction to Latin music because Cal had the best. He had Mongo Santa Maria and Willie Bobo, so I would listen to Vince playing those mantunas and phrasing, and so it opened up the whole new world.
I want to tell you that I had Henry Franklin on and a guy who used to play with John Hurd, 2 bass players.
Right.
They talked about, because I'm beginning to piece this puzzle together, Larry, and what I realized is that the Jader-Al McKibben duo was extremely significant in the lives of many developing bass players in the 60s and 70s. Huge impact, huge cutting edge. Is that fair?
You're right, man. Al McKibben was in the original band with Chano Pozo and Dizzy. So he had that concept of how to play Latin bass. Also, he was an excellent jazz bass player, straight ahead.
And it had a huge impact there. I wanted to ask you, we're about 20 minutes in here with Larry Vuckovich, great piano player, ethnic piano player. His roots are in his music. He incorporates a lot of strings in his music. But I've noticed, Larry, actually, I keep having these side questions come up because there's just so much to get to. But
Sure.
what I've noticed in your more recent albums like Street Scene, the accompanying percussion is more Middle Eastern, but really that kind of was the beginnings of your musical interest anyway. You talk about that instead of the Baltic, like the Eastern European influence. I hear a lot more, maybe how should we say this, east of Turkey.
Well, Turkey had a strong influence, on the music of the Balkans. It occupied those places.
Yes.
And the music of Turkey has percussive instruments. It has those Arabic scales, which are very similar to different ethnic groups of the East, of klezmer scales. And then it all comes from India anyway. The gypsies come from India. So all that music is mixed in. And Indian rhythms have so many odd meters, and in Yugoslavia, the state of Macedonia is the one that has the odd meters.
Larry, I have to ask you, please tell me why the beginnings of music come from India. I need to know. I want more. I want you to explain that more.
Well, I don't know whether it's because it's further east, or it's an old place,
Mm-hmm.
And
but why more? Why more them than like China? Was it just a
well, it's a different flavor. Chinese music is basically melodically, from what I heard, unless I can find something else. It's
right.
It does not use a lot of minor seconds and those kind of minor third intervals and flat fives, and minor sevenths. That's the blues scale, which in America became. But those scales were played in the old world way before, So Chinese music is mostly pentatonic, 5-note scale, That's an old culture, but it has a different flavor.
But just the polyrhythmic quality of Indian music is something I've been amazingly fascinated about over the last few months, and I just find that interesting that we when I hear different people have their different takes on the origins of these beginnings of early music. But I did notice there's a lot. You have some Middle Eastern percussive instruments on Street Scene, for instance. Was that a conscious decision to do stuff like that?
Yes, on both Street Scene and my last CD was High Wall,
mm-hmm.
and that one featured the same percussionists, both two of them. Vince Delgado, who is from Mexican-American heritage, somehow he got very close to the music of India and Turkey, and he tours and plays in Turkey and India. He plays with he played with Ali Akbar Khan. He toured with. I'm trying to think of the well-known.
Well, you don't have to say anything else. Ali Akbar Khan has been in my radar screen for for the last 4 or 5 months. That's enough said right there.
Correct. Another one, I just can't think of the name, is a famous Indian musician. He tours with him. So he's an expert in that music. So on some of that material, I wanted to have that percussion to give it more authentic flavor. And then Hector Lugo is a wonderful Latin percussionist who also plays 4/4, like Chano Pozo did on Street Scene, on tracks like Blue Bohemia Blues, and also on Gypsy Mambo. The Indian musician is Zakir Hussain.
Of course, the tabla player.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, that's the. But I brought that percussion to show the marriage of Middle Eastern music and jazz and polyrhythms. So it would give it more authenticity.
Absolutely. I did want to. It's always kind of been kind of a mystical thing for me, and ever since you mentioned it, it kind of fascinated me. But when you started with John Hendricks and this new accent on the blues, was it a Broadway show? I mean, what was it a live venue show? How did that work?
It was. See, John Hendricks, as you know, recorded on Columbia Records. If you don't have it, I can send you a copy.
That'd be great, yeah.
Evolution of the Blues. And he thought of the concept of the African slaves brought to America. And when they worked in the work fields, they start chanting, then it becomes gospel, and they become very spiritual, to help themselves raise their spirit from that horrible oppression they were going through. Little by little, they go to the cities, it becomes the blues. So John formed this idea and recorded it first with Pony Poindexter, Big Miller, Ben Webster, Jimmy Witherspoon, Hannah Dean, great gospel singer. Then he took it on the road, and I had the great fortune. See, the show opened 1974 on Broadway Street in San Francisco, but before that, Noel Jukes and I, great saxophonist, toured with John in Northwest with all the people from that cast. Pony wasn't there, but the others were.
Sure.
And, what an experience for me to be playing blues with these people. I'm getting closer and closer to it the more I play, And one plus is because I come from the Balkans, and those scales and that minor feeling has a similarity to the blues. But the more I played the blues, the better it became, So it was basically a show on the road. Then John got the idea to put it on stage. And every night playing that music, it was an emotionally moving experience. And John was very clever with words like Duke Ellington. There was one point that I would say something, in the middle of the show, and the focus was on, he would say, if you wonder what Brother Vuckovich is doing here, he comes from that part of Yugoslavia known as Montenegro. And everybody would laugh, So, but it has some truth there,
I just wanted to talk to Larry. We have just so much more to talk about.
Sure.
I wanted to talk about, racially, the kind of things that you might have been up against when you first came here as an immigrant. We're going to talk a lot about Hadley Kalaman and going to Germany and being in that house band and playing with guys like Philly Joe Jones and Charles McPherson, Tom Harrell. You've done it all, Larry, and we're gonna go through it all. But we're gonna listen as we go to break. Here's Blue Balkan again. Hang tight. We'll come back real soon.
It's been a frustrating day for travelers and officials at Minneapolis-St. Paul Airport. A power outage led to a number of cancellations. Delta passenger Lloyd Spencer missed his connecting flight to Seattle.
Yeah, I think probably the thing that impacted quite a few people was the connections, and you could see that there was a fair amount of stress about that.
Looks to be a wet weekend across much of the Ohio, Tennessee, and Mississippi River valleys. That's not what flood victims wanted to hear. Businessman and talk show host Herman Cain has officially declared he's running for the Republican presidential nomination. No Triple Crown winner again this year in horse racing. Shackelford led wire to wire to take the Preakness Stakes. A late charge by Kentucky Derby winner Animal Kingdom fell just short. And this is the day some had predicted the world would end, and those who were saved would be taken up to heaven. So far, nothing to report. The most trusted name in news. This is CNN Radio.
If you want your lawn to look lush and green, it's time to step things up. Scott's 4-step annual program makes it easy. From an early spring feeding that also stops crabgrass before it starts, to late spring nourishment and weed control, to protection from the high summer heat, to building strong, deep roots for an early spring green-up. Step up your lawn care today. Buy the Scott's 4-step annual program exclusively from the people you trust, the folks at your independent garden center and hardware store.
Here's another question from the Geico Savings Mailbag.
Heather from Bakersfield writes, how do you feel about rain? Well, Heather, if you're talking about the downpour of savings people are getting on their motorcycle insurance with Geico, then I love it.
It's quite literally a money monsoon.
Ooh, a late afternoon cash shower.
And those riders who combine their motorcycle and auto insurance will have an even higher chance of savings cloudbursts.
Now, the only kind of rain I don't like is the wet kind. Humidity makes my hair frizz.
Call Geico or visit geico.com today to see how much our multi-policy discount could save you.
What if I told you buying a good used car just got a whole lot easier? And what if you could know the history, mileage, and price of that used car long before you even go to the dealership? Well, here's the answer. Simply go online and search Yahoo for Honda certified used cars. You'll see the current selection at the Honda dealers nearest you, along with the information you need to make an informed decision. Feels good to be in control, doesn't it? Okay, no more questions. Honda certified used cars. It may be used, but it's still a Honda.
Folks, this is Jake Feinberg. Every Friday night I get takeout from Bai Tong Restaurant, which serves Tucson's most authentic Thai cuisine. Pad Thais, fresh vegetables, and spicy Penang curry are my personal favorites, but every meal is sumptuous and cooked to order. Located at 4853 East Speedway Boulevard, Bai Tong serves compelling and affordable lunch specials as well as a full dinner menu. Bai Tong has ingratiated itself with the community by providing a peaceful environment to enjoy a meal with friends and family. Open weekdays for lunch 11 to 3, 5 to 9:30 for dinner Sunday to Thursday, until 10 on Friday and Saturday. So come down to Bai Tong Restaurant at 4853 East Speedway Boulevard to experience a taste of Thailand. When Coffee Times first opened, many wondered how this standalone coffee hut could survive among the beasts of Java lore. But some 10 years later, the answer is a resounding yes. Located at 3401 East Speedway Boulevard, Coffee Times specializes in many different drinks, from mocha fraps to lattes to my personal favorite, the Ice Power Coffee. The best part about Coffee Times is their convenient two-way drive-thru, lunch menu, and supreme service. Not to mention their weekly special. So next time you're in the area, head over to Coffee Times on Speedway between Alberton and Country Club. It will definitely kickstart your day.
Hi, this is Tommy DiMaggio. When your friends or relatives come to beautiful Tucson and you have already taken them to the Desert Museum in Sabino Canyon too many times, it's time for something different. What's different, you ask? Purple Mountain Pack Goats. That's me, Tommy DiMaggio, and my wonderful goats. We've been leading hikes in the Coronado National Forest for 15 years. We take people of all ages and abilities on beautiful hikes in the surrounding mountains and deserts. I provide great meals, animal companionships. We have day hikes or overnight hikes. We have been featured in Arizona Highways, the Sunday London Times travel section, National Geographic Canadian Travel Magazine. For information or for your personal hike, call 403-4056 or visit us on the web at azpackgoat.com or call 403-4056. Remember, bring your field guide, camera, and imagination. We'll bring the rest. A great lunch carried by the goats. 403-4056 or visit us on the web, azpackcoat.com.
Folks, this is Jake Feinberg. Being a father, I know there is nothing more important than your child's health. And nobody is more dedicated to children's health in Southern Arizona than Dwayne Dyson. Dr. Dyson is Tucson's finest pediatrician and has devoted much of his professional career to improving the lives of children. Located at 4530 East Camp Fort Lowell, Dr. Dyson's resume speaks for itself. After doing his undergraduate work at Cal Berkeley, his schooling took him to Morehouse School of Medicine, where he mentored young adolescents about the need for pediatric physicians in Atlanta, and worked extensively with infants at the Texas Children's Hospital. The special thing about Dr. Dyson is that while his in-house care is exceptional, he also prepares families about what to expect once they leave the office. Dr. Dyson provides comprehensive and honest analysis for all of his patients. Dr. Dyson and his family live and work in Tucson because he knows how vibrant and diverse the community is. He is committed to procuring a robust family health center that can instill trust and alleviate the concerns of parents. Like I said, his resume speaks for itself. For more information, check out DysonPediatrics.com. Folks, this is Jake Feinberg. One of the first things I wanted to do when I moved to Tucson was find authentic Chinese cuisine. After a tip from the Chinese Student Association, I headed over to Badar Chinese Restaurant. Well, it's been 7 years and I have never looked back. Located at 7321 East Broadway Boulevard, Badar has been a family-run operation since 1992. The award-winning chef produces succulent dishes from sizzling ginger chicken to salt and pepper shrimp. The thing that separates Badar from the rest is that the chef procures ancient oriental dishes with the exotic island flair of Taiwan. Most importantly, there are no gimmicks or razzle-dazzle at Badar. You won't find any flat-screen TVs or karaoke machines. Badar is a place to go enjoy good food and spend time with your family. It exudes peace and tranquility after a long week of work. So come down and check out Badar Chinese Restaurant. Hong Hao Chu. It's that good. Big Feinberg Show. We're joined here by Larry Vuckovich, amazing piano player from Yugoslavia. He's really done it all. And Larry, it's great to have you on the program.
Oh, thank you for having me, Jake.
Thanks for having to sit through my corporate sponsorship as well. I appreciate that very much.
That's part of the scene.
What was the scene like in the 60s? You weren't taking commercial breaks to go to corporate sponsors. You weren't. Nobody was getting extremely independently wealthy off this kind of stuff. There was intimacy in the venues. People were close to the musicians. They were able to have a spiritual experience. That's lacking now in our constructs. Do you agree?
Yeah, it is. You know, there were a lot more activity than the people were hanging, you know. There were so many places to go at night. There were sessions during the day. People would learn from each other. When we would run into McCoy Tyner at the workshop, we met him, you know, and we would ask him, what are the changes to body and soul on the bridge, those alternate hip changes? He would take a napkin and write them out, you know. and people would hang after our clubs. Today, like I was talking to Chuck McPherson the other day, he said New York, when I left, I was there 85 to 90. After I left, all the places were not the same anymore. There's no more hanging. He said you can hardly go anywhere where the musicians get together, like Bradley's and different places, hang and stuff. It's you know, the economy has ruined so many things, man.
It really has, and I just wonder a little bit about you know, let's go back to an album like that you collaborated on, maybe the Hadley Callman album, because it was the first time. Just for my audience's point of view, I first discovered Larry on the liner notes of Hadley Callman's self-titled album on Mainstream, and the picture of Larry is just amazing. Have you seen that picture in a while, Larry?
I have the album. Yeah,
I was going to say, because your mouth is agape, your eyes are closed, and you're just, whatever you're playing, I don't know if it's an up-tempo tune or it's a ballad, but you are on fire. I'm like, I got to find this guy, because this was classic. And I guess, like, how much money would you make on an album like this back in 19?
It was just minimum scale. You can look at all jazz great albums for different people from the 40s, 50s, all the sessions, you know, Coltrane, Miles, you know, the sidemen basically just made minimal scale. But the idea wasn't the money. The idea was music. See, we are all in for the music, you know. That's the difference from us playing this music or from people playing commercial music or even a lot of rock stuff, you know, which there is, of course, good rock stuff, but a lot of it, it's so simplified, oversimplified, simplistic, and formulated, you know, repetitive, 2 or 3 chords, you know, so they're making millions. But we're in here for different...
they're making millions off they don't expand people's minds.
No.
You know,
I have to say something here that is true of the whole universe, man. I don't know if you heard of these are Eastern teachings. I don't know, have you heard of Ouspensky or Gurdjieff?
You go talk about it.
Pardon me?
Go ahead and talk about it.
Okay, Gurdjieff was a teacher who was projecting Middle Eastern teaching based in the Sufi teachings or different Eastern teachings found in some schools, you know, secret schools, you know, near Himalayas, and he studied all his life to find out how to live, you know, the ideas, what's the point. Like, for example, Gurdjieff teachings were highly supported by Frank Lloyd Wright. Keith Jarrett was in one of his schools, and there were other musicians. So basically, the philosophy of that is this. We talk about music and acceptance in the universe, the smallest circles of people are the hippest people, the people with more intelligence and feeling and knowledge, the smallest. The bigger the circles become, the denser the sensitivity, intelligent soul is. I mean, the bigger. So in other words, the bigger circles occupy more of the mass who is willing to swallow the garbage, man.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that's a fact of life. What can you do? You know, to teach, to expand that consciousness, you need special focus, special studying, to be surrounded by those minds, you know, to help you tune into a higher quality music like jazz and stuff. You need special listening and other forms of spiritual behavior and all that. But the bigger circles, as you know, are running the world. That's why you got all these wars and stuff like that.
Yeah, they're fighting over commodities, and they're not fighting over humanist. They're not fighting over human beings. It's over commodities.
Exactly. You know, so it's always greed and money and materialistic stuff. You know, but that's affecting our lives in jazz.
Well,
too.
Yeah, let's go back to McPherson. I mean, the idea that these careers that you guys had. And you affected so many people on profound metaphysical levels, not monetary levels. And at the same time, careers it's just that much harder to be in a position where you maybe you want to make music, or you want to be in theater, you want to be a singer or a dancer. You can't make a living on that. And our society has sort of programmed us to say, well, these are the values we have, and if you want to go into each of these commodities, whether it's healthcare or it's engineering or it's science, we're going to value those, and you'll get paid accordingly. But if you want to go into more humanistic stuff that doesn't have quantifiable value, you can't. It's just that much hard. Society's made it that much harder to have that kind of lifestyle.
Yeah, the society and the music politics, the business people, they dictate what's going to be heard on radio and TV. In the old days, big bands were the thing, the good quality music. Jazz was much stronger. It had more impact. The national major networks, ABC, NBC, CBS, had jazz shows by Jackie Gleason would put an hour and a half, Steve Allen. All these people had, presenting all this great music. And but it started to lose it. The more the pop music became stronger, the jazz became watered down. It's the nature of the business. But we're in here for the music.
And let's be clear, because I want to pivot. I want to pivot out of this because we're both very positive people. Every time I call Larry on the phone, he's like, "Yo, man, I got to go to a gig. It's always a gig." So you're still playing. I mean, there's still people that want to hear sophisticated, good music. I wasn't sure whereabouts the venues are in wine country that you play at, or whether you go down to the big city and play.
There's some stuff in the wine country. Last night I played a gig in Sonoma. There is a place called the Plaza Bistro, and a very hip lady, Janice King, who is producing the music. The guy I played with is 85 years old, Frank Jackson, a legend, Bay Area legend. He was the pianist at the Bob City, playing with Dexter Gordon, Poindexter, Charlie Parker when they would come through, Lester Young, and he sings. And he's 85. He sounds like 40. And yeah, singer. And the bass player is late 70s from Detroit, Al Badinsky. So in other words, these guys are in for the music.
Right. Absolutely.
And people love the old tunes and the spirit of the music. It lifts them.
But what about, set the scene for me when you were, my gosh, let's see, you were 25 or 26 in the early in 71, 72. You could just show up at a given venue, maybe make a couple phone calls, and for instance, how did Clarence Becton and Hadley Callman and you come together? Was it informal, where you just met during a spontaneous jam session, or not all this stuff was orchestrated?
Sure. Clarence and I met in John Hendricks. See, Clarence came to San Francisco. John Hendricks brought him and John Hurd. they were part of his trio.
He brought John Hurd.
Flip Nunez, the Philippine-American pianist.
I love that. I love Flip Nunez.
Flip, wonderful, man.
Yeah.
So he had to do something else. So Flip recommended me. Then I joined John.
That's great. That, also the other. I just realized it's my trifecta of Flip Nunez, Larry Vuckovich, and George Morabus, another great Bay Area guy.
That's right. They're all Bay Area people, and I used to.
It's beautiful.
Call Flip later when I was at the Hyatt to sub for me, and so we had a long-going connection. So Clarence and I and Bill Douglas played with John different times. So we had a nice trio feeling. So when we met Hadley, we started playing, and that's how that developed,
I wanted to just read a quote here from Hadley Calaman. I was reading these last night to my daughter before she went to bed, and it says, "Finally there is longing. A song called Longing, which I wish I had digitized so we could play it. It's a beautiful song. Larry wrote it, and as a flute specialty for the session." And Hadley's comment about Larry, and this is back in the early 1970s, "Larry's a very, very dedicated person," says Calaman, "a cat who comes over here from Yugoslavia and really grooved with what was happening." And I don't think you could sum it up better in any way, shape, or form, that you, like I said in the opening, you brought your ethnic qualities, but you also balanced it with assimilation. And it's really about moderation, is it not?
Yeah, it's a blending with different cultures. Like you have Joe Zawinul, you have Victor Feldman, George Shearing. They all bring some European elements, but American jazz is the American classical music of this country. And to play it correctly, if you want to say, you have to tune into that feeling of that music, the rhythm, the melody and the harmonies and the blues feeling. You have to absorb that. If you're going to play Mozart, you have to interpret his thoughts, his language. Otherwise, you're not going to play his music. Same thing with jazz, So you blend in together and try to be yourself, but respect the tradition and the culture, and speak that language.
Even though you kind of hit the scene big time in the States with Hendrix, you also made a decision to go back to Europe and go back to Germany, where you were the leader of a house band over there. Talk to my audience a little bit about the scene in that bar, restaurant. What was it like over there?
It was a true jazz club. I worked with John for about a year, but English Musicians Union is very tough. They don't allow people to go in there. Like Philly Joe couldn't play there. So after a while, I needed to work, So a gig came in Munich where the guy needed a house trio to accompany all the American greats coming through. So Clarence Beckman was on drums, and we did two CDs. Clarence wasn't on this one with John Hendricks, but then we did one with Serbian trumpet player Duško Gojković, very good bebop player. He lived in America. And we accompanied Lucky Thompson, Slide Hampton, Clifford Jordan. And so it was a true jazz club, a real, like a jazz atmosphere. So it was playing creative music every night. And the music was very exciting, but I needed to go back to the States. I started missing the American feeling, like...
What describe that feeling?
Well, for one thing, Germany is a very organized country, but there was still the feeling at the time of master race. They're better than anybody. I had enough.
You
of
mean
that.
even in the mid '60s, after the destruction of the Nazi Party, they still felt this absolute? That's interesting.
Yeah, whether they didn't wave the flag and say I'm a Nazi,
right.
They looked down on. They always felt that superiority, and stiffness. So I had enough of it. And then, I missed being in U.S. where you can jam with all the guys, and U.S. always musically led the world, what with the new developments, So in San Francisco is a beautiful place. So it was good that I came back, and little by little, of course, with John Hendricks' Evolution of the Blues, great experience, and then Keystone Corner opened up, and then I became the house pianist there. and had experience accompanying a lot of musicians. So that came through with the guys that Todd Barkin brought in.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that because a lot of kids from my generation, we are aware of the Keystone Corner because of guys like Jerry Garcia and Merle Saunders, who played there and loved it there, and it had the element of a club that was extremely diverse in the sense that you would have the psychedelic rock going on, but at the same time, like you talked about, there was an emphasis on serious jazz playing. That's undeniable.
Well, see, the rock stuff never happened during the 5 years that I was there, 78 to 83. It could have been at the beginning when the club opened, but once Todd established it as jazz club, there was no rock and roll groups there.
Well, can I just ask about that?
Gordon was there.
Go ahead.
Things like that.
I was just going to say that I know that Jerry Garcia's band played there hundreds of times between 81 and 83.
Maybe they did. Maybe in the end, I don't recall it. Or maybe it's funny. Are you thinking maybe of the Great American Music Hall, perhaps?
No.
Or the old Trident in Sausalito?
You know what I'll do because Larry sent me about four discs of just beautiful music. Mm-hmm. I'm going to send you some Jerry Garcia band from the Keystone Corner. I'd like to
check it out.
Yeah, no, it would be cool but let's not sway away from this because I have Art Blakey, live from the Keystone Corner in '79. Although I believe he brought in his own band. I don't remember. You're not on that album.
No. We were the house trio when a musician would come by himself, like Charles McPherson,
of course,
or Leon Thomas, Arnett Cobb, Buddy Tate, Cleanhead Vincent. And when people came by themselves, then we would accompany them. But the bands, mostly Keystone was a club where the whole units played mainly. They're traveling bands,
And who was in the house band with you?
Eddie Marshall, great drummer, and James Leary on bass. We did one album live there with Cleanhead Vincent. It really came out really nice.
And what year was that?
That was 79, I believe.
What year is it? What's the name of that album?
It's called Redux, live at Keystone. If you don't have it, I'll send you a copy.
I mean, that's right up my alley.
It's a great album. He sings great blues, but were you aware that Cleanhead wrote Four and Tune Up, not Miles?
Yeah, can you say that again, please?
The famous tunes, Four, and then Tune Up, ba ba bo do dee da da do do dee ba 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 bo dee ba da bo do ba da ba da. They were Cleanhead Vincent tunes.
Wow.
Miles ripped it from him.
He ripped. Oh, I mean, there's always people borrowing, No,
he directly ripped the whole tune and put his name on it. Miles tried. He was a great musician and a band leader, but this is one trait that is not good. He ripped Bill Evans for Blue and Green. He ripped Cleanhead. He was trying to rip Benny Carter with When Lights Are Low. Beep, ba, 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 da, da, dee, da, da, da. He put his name on it. Benny got a lawyer and quickly changed that. But Cleanhead was not business organized. He was partying and having fun. He never got a lawyer. Now I understand Miles on his website gives credit to Cleanhead, but so anyway.
No, I think you have to. I mean, Miles knew that he had to clear his conscience.
Yeah, I guess.
I think that there's an underbelly of the beast here that has to be explored, and I appreciate you bringing it up.
Yeah, well, that's part of it. And Bill Evans told me, I met Bill a few times through the business in Europe and here, and he told me, I wrote most of the music for Blue and Green. And he did. And one time, he ran into Miles on the street. He said, Miles, how about some royalties? And Miles sends him a check for $25. What an insult, man.
But that is just flat wrong from Davis.
See, Miles, I'm sorry. Great musician, a great band leader, but his behavior had a lot to be desired.
Highly narcissistic, really. Highly narcissistic. That's just, and Bill Evans just a romantic, unbelievable player. really was duly responsible for a lot of Miles's early success. It's unfortunate, but I think that's also one of the puzzle pieces that I'm putting together is that while Miles was a revolutionary in many musical respects, his drawback was his human character, and that suffered.
Yeah,
and he was always a tortured soul, in that sense.
Yeah, whatever reasons you want to explain. Even Coltrane in his book said he didn't want to be around Miles because Miles was always in a bad mood. Always projected negative energy. Coltrane said that, and then he said, "I like being with Monk." And I love listening to Miles' music. You know what happens? People can be nasty, but when they play, you want to call it, they get closer to God, they get closer to spirit. Something takes over the music,
Well, we're here with. I hear you, Larry, 100%. And we're here with Larry Vuckovich. Larry, I just wanted to say, you are the fourth Bay Area musician that I've talked to, and all of them, Calvin Keyes and John Handy, and I talked to Pete Magadini last week, and every time I brought up your name, it was always just a sincere amount of respect. They say I've played with Larry for years, and I hope I get a chance to come up there someday and see you guys, do an informal jam again, because the truth is that this is my tribute to you guys, and I want to give you some exposure that you've never had before, and so it's great to have you on the program.
Well, I appreciate your love and commitment to this music to give it a chance, because it's getting thinner and thinner, man. There are less radio stations now. TV hardly has any jazz at all, and it's just unbelievable what's happening. Like you heard about the Grammys cutting the Latin music, all the ethnic musics of the world. They're cutting Latin music. They want to throw out Cajun. They want to throw out Zydeco. The polka, the Hawaiian, anything to do with these minorities, ethnic groups, they want to cut it out.
It's hard to stem that tide, and I think that this immigration debate, until we can resolve it in a humane and fair way, our society will continually just keep stubbing its foot and never be able to really progress, as Gary Bartz would say, turn from human animals into human beings. Larry Vuckovich, it has been an honor and a pleasure, and I hope to see you back here on KJLL The Jolt to continue our talk radio experience. It's been a pleasure.
Well, thank you so much for an invitation and for the call. It was very refreshing to speak with you, Jake. Hopefully we'll connect soon, man.
Absolutely, my friend. Have a wonderful day, and thanks for the insight.
Thank you.
1330 KJLL, South Tucson.
CBS News, I'm Sam Litzinger. The mayor of Vicksburg, Mississippi, says he knows people who've been evacuated because of flooding are eager to come back to their homes and their businesses, but they have to wait until it's safe. The hope is the Mississippi River has gotten as high as it's going to get in Vicksburg, but Governor Haley Barbour isn't ready to sound the all clear.
These levees